Welcome back to the Crash Course Podcast. My name is Craig Crash Collins, joined as always by Brandon Scott, otherwise known as B. Scott. A lot to talk about tonight, a lot of stuff from around the city of Indianapolis and the state of Indiana. Really excited to get into it. We're going to be talking about Colts camp, some of the big storylines coming out of there as the Colts season gets ever so closer. We also talk about Peyton Manning, Edgerrin James. They're going into the Hall of Fame. Finally, it's going to be fun to kind of relive some memories there. We're going to talk about our favorite memories from those two careers. And we're also going to talk about maybe, in my opinion, one of the biggest weekends. I know that, we've had big weekends in motorsport. Like, you have, the Memorial Day weekend where you have the Indy 500, the Coke 600, and, Monaco. But, this is
the biggest non-Memorial weekend race weekend.
Right, because it's one of the first where you see two sports, coming together.
But it's not the first. Everybody says it's the first. Last year was the first, when they all came around the 4th of July.
That's
IndyCar
true.
did the Indy GP on the 4th of July weekend. Xfinity did the road course, and NASCAR did the Brickyard on the oval, and that's when they decided, hey, look, having the race on the road course looks really good. It was great with Xfinity, so let's go ahead and just move the Brickyard over there. So I think.
So I guess you could say the first with fans.
Yeah.
So, which I think is the most important cog to that whole thing.
No capacity limit.
Yes. So, that's what I'm really excited to, and I won't go full-fledged into the spiel, but that's what I'm, kind of most excited about is the opportunity for fans of both sports to kind of rub elbows, kind of hopefully get one fan base into the other sport. So get NASCAR fans more in tune to IndyCar, get IndyCar fans more in tune to NASCAR. I'm more concerned about the impact it has on IndyCar than I am on NASCAR, but because NASCAR, I think, already has its following. I said I wasn't going to get too much into it, but here I am getting into it. But before we get into the Colts camp and all that kind of stuff, B. Scott, how have you been this week?
Been good. Still packing everything up, getting ready to move still. Feels like I've been trying to do that for about 2 months now, but hey,
as someone who just recently moved, I don't envy the fact that it's all still ahead of you, because definitely it's a lot better feeling when it's all behind you. Hey, you know what? It'll come sooner or later. Just like Wentz's debut will come sooner or later, but we're not really sure when that will be as we get into our conversation about Colts camp. The big storyline so far is the injuries. We talk about, Carson Wentz, who last Monday underwent foot surgery to remove a piece of loose bone. A day later, Quentin Nelson goes down with the same injury. The timetable is 5 to 12 weeks. Now, if you're looking at it in terms of the season, 5 weeks would be the first week of September, so that would be on the short end, and that would mean no time missed by Carson Wentz. 6 weeks would be, or Quentin Nelson. 6 weeks would be week 1, and then 12 weeks would put Wentz and Nelson back for week 8 versus the Titans, which is about, if you're doing the math, 40% of the season? Which, hey, if you're looking at
if it's Wentz, that's great.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you're looking at the whole draft pick side of it, it's really good news, because that means, in all likelihood, you won't owe the Philadelphia Eagles a draft pick.
No, you will. It just won't be a first round.
Well, right. And as of right now, Jacob Eason looks to be the starter. Sam Ehlinger, the backup. There's been some rumblings will the Colts trade for Nick Foles? Will Phillip Rivers come out of retirement? No, I think it's a good, and I agree with it. I think it's good for the Colts to just finally have their plan and stick to it. I think it's been kind of, plug and play, cut, copy, and paste since Luck left. And now it's kind of okay, we have our plan. We're going with Wentz. We drafted Eason, Ehlinger. Hopefully one of them pans out as the backup moving forward. This is what we're going to do. And I agree with that. I hope that that's what they end up doing because, especially, don't bring in Foles in that contract. I don't want to see that. I mean, I can kind of, as long as Phillip Rivers knows what the plan is. But then also, you bring in Rivers, and I feel like that's just a detrimental blow to the confidence of Eason and Ellinger. Maybe not so much Ellinger, but Eason. Yeah, because this is the second time now that you're like, it was going to be on your shoulders, and then we kind of took it out of your hands, and now we're putting in, we're again going to go get the same guy back, so you don't have to play. Like, that's going to be not the greatest. Like, it would be understandable because he's still not played a snap with no preseason or anything else, but at the same time, like, I think it's time to either just, we're going full steam ahead with Eason or Ellinger until we get Wentz back.
Yeah, and I can say, I mean, looking at the conversation on Twitter and everything, Phillip Rivers isn't coming back. He's happy coaching. He may want to sign on as a backup later on in the season. He said he would consider coming back after the high school season was done. But I don't think they're going to trade for Nick Foles. I know Nick Foles has said he would love to be here while at Bears training camp. So, you can't give up any more draft capital. And we know how Ballot is with his draft capital. So that's not happening. And it is time for Jacob Eason to show what he's got. He was drafted for a reason. He was always viewed as one of the higher picks, and then had some issues, injury issues, and his performance dropped a little bit in college, so his name fell. He is still a big arm, and if you follow along with what's going on in training camp, it looks like every day he's getting better and better. The only thing is, Sam Ellinger has looked really good, really confident, mobile. He's kind of everything you really want in a quarterback in today's quarterback style of the NFL. So that's a thing to look for. I know Frank Reich has come out and said that he's not looking at getting Sam Ellinger the reps with the first unit. He's still running with Jacob Eason. Obviously, that's a good thing because, Jacob Eason, he doesn't have the same rapport with the wide receivers like Carson Wentz was going to have. It doesn't have the same experience. And to see him get better and better every day at camp, that's a good sign. It's working. His confidence is coming around. Obviously, the first day, he wasn't good at running with the ones. He wasn't going to have, a great output and everything. But as time has gone on, he's gotten better. He's built a really good rapport with rookie tight end Kyle Granson, which is kind of interesting because that was Sam Ellinger's high school teammate. So, I'm actually more confident in the quarterback situation than most people are, mostly because of our run game. And, if the Colts have to really rely on the run game for a few weeks at the beginning of the season, I'm okay with that because you got a stable of 3 running backs that are extremely capable of being high quality. I mean, obviously, look, Marlon Mack and Jonathan Taylor are considered some of the best. As far as the Quentin Nelson injury goes, I know it was very similar, same surgery and everything like that, but it appears to be Quentin Nelson is actually on a quicker rehab trajectory than Carson Wentz. If you listen to what Quentin Nelson is saying, he's going to be back by week 1. He'll probably be out all of preseason, but he's already saying he plans on being back week 1. He's going to really kick it into high gear for rehab. And I honestly do believe that. I mean, if there's a guy that can play through an injury like that or rehab quickly, it's going to be Quentin Nelson. I mean, guy's tough as nails. So
yeah,
I wouldn't be surprised to see him back. That's honestly the biggest thing is for Quentin Nelson to get back quicker than even Carson Wentz. One, because of Carson Wentz, if he misses some time, that helps with the draft pick with the trade with the Eagles. And I feel like with the run game and with Frank Reich kind of molding the offense a little bit more around essentially a rookie quarterback, I think that puts the Colts are still in a good position to win. And without Quentin Nelson, it becomes a little bit trickier, in my opinion, especially without having Eric Fisher ready to go by week 1 as well.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Quentin Nelson is not only the biggest, kind of outlier, but he's also, the one I'm, least concerned about getting back sooner rather than later, just because if for no better reason or no better, answer than, offensive linemen, are just built different. They're like, oh yeah, sure, that's fine. I'll go, I'll have my, arm amputated and I'll be out there the next week, whatever it is. So I mean, I do think that he'll get back sooner rather than later, but that does lead us in to our hot or cold, and that is, should Colts fans be worried regarding the Colts injury situation? And I'm technically in the hot category. Like, I technically think, I think it is a hot take, only because of who the Colts have at the beginning of the year. And that's the kind of the tough part, because even though, Quentin Nelson is on, says he's on track to be back week 1, even though I'm really honestly glass half full when it comes to the Wentz injury, because I feel like the fact that he was leaning towards playing through it, kind of makes me feel a little bit better about the severity of what it was. I mean, it's probably better for him to have gone ahead and got the surgery, but at the same time, if he was willing to play through it, then it must have been not so severe that it was going to, severely impact his play. So, but the problem is that, I read in an article that Wentz's projected timeline should be closer to 8 to 12 weeks instead of 5 to 12 weeks. And I mean, if you look at the Colts schedule, by week 8, which is the max time that Wentz and Nelson could be potentially out, the Colts will have played the Seahawks, the Rams, the Titans, the Dolphins, the Ravens, the Texans, and the 49ers. Those teams last season were a combined 53-43. That's a .552 winning percentage for the 7 teams made the playoffs last season. So you're gonna be kind of, Jacob Eason, Sam Ehlinger, whoever ends up being more likely, Eason, you're just kind of gonna get thrown to the wolves a little bit. And while yes, it's gonna be great if you can get the running game going, but hell, if you're down Nelson and Fisher for any length of time that's significant, that running game is going to get harder to establish, especially when teams are going to be loading the box knowing that you've got a quarterback taking his first snaps of his career, back under center. So that's why it kind of worries me. I'm not in the camp of well, you know what, just kind of do what you can do and we'll try to come back next year and, get a high draft pick. That's not where I'm at. I still think that it's going to be a good season for the Indianapolis Colts. I just think that I'm worried depending on how long they're going to be out, because if it's the longer they're out, the more tough teams they play, the more likely it is going to be that they're going to be in a situation where they're under 500 trying to play from behind, especially by that point having already played the Titans, because that's the thing too. Their first week back is going to be against the Titans. So even if Wentz comes back, then you're getting thrown to the wolves if you're Carson Wentz. Immediately into what will be a key divisional game, especially if they're 2-5. If they're 1-6, hopefully not. Which I don't think it'll be that drastic. Maybe 2-5.
Throw in the towel.
What's that?
If they're 1-6, just throw in the towel.
Right.
Don't even worry about bringing Wentz back until until he's not going to play 75% of the snaps.
Right. So, and that's the thing. Eason and Ehlinger haven't played a snap of NFL football, so that worries you. I mentioned a little bit on that, and then and going with the how tight the race will be this year. The AFC race is going to be loaded. You've got at least 3 teams from every division, maybe except for the AFC South. But you have the Bills, Dolphins, and Pats. I think the Pats are going to be improved this year. In the AFC North, you've got the Colts and Titans. In the South, the Jags are going to be tougher with Lawrence. You're going to have, all the teams, honestly, in the AFC West are solid. They're not sleeper teams at all. I could see Las Vegas having a playoff caliber season. You're telling me Las Vegas can't be the 7th team? They almost were last year. Denver, could they be the 7th team? I don't know. Maybe if they get a quarterback by then. We'll see. The Chargers were good last season. Then you have the Steelers, Browns, and Ravens in the North. So, there's 10-ish teams for 7 spots. And without having your quarterback and having to throw your young guys into the fire almost immediately, you know what your first treat is, Jacob Eason, as an NFL starter? The Seattle defense. Have fun. That's what it's going to be. And so It makes me worried about the Colts' playoff caliber. The fact that the longer they're going to be without Wentz, and I know that's obvious, but that's why I'm in the worried stage. Not because I think Wentz is gonna oh, here we go, Wentz is hurt. That's not where I'm coming from. I'm coming from hey, I mean the schedule couldn't be any tougher to start the season.
Right. Yeah, and I agree. This is a hot take for sure. Not just because of Carson Wentz and Quentin Nelson, but we are also looking at, DeForest Buckner has missed time in camp. I know a couple of guys have been out for COVID-related issues, so they're back now. But DeForest Buckner, that's a big one. We don't have a whole lot of depth on the interior of the defensive line right now, and that's your big piece. Now, there are a couple free agents sitting out there that would be helpful, a la Kwan Short, but that's another topic for another day. But yeah, it is worrisome when you look at the schedule, and this is a team that has deep playoff run aspirations. Missing 3 key components potentially is very worrisome. And if you don't have that pressure coming up the middle from DeForest Buckner, I mean, it's a trickle effect. It puts more pressure than on the linebackers, which we're not as deep at linebacker this year as we were last year. And then it trickles on back to the secondary, where that's probably our biggest weakness on the defense is the secondary. So there's so many different trickle-down effects. The left side of the offensive line right now is totally up in the air. There was a video that came out today of Sam Tevi being absolutely manhandled by Kamiko Toure, and that was not encouraging to see. Now, luckily, there's some bodies that are coming back at left tackle, so that will help. So it's really concerning, especially when you look at the defenses that the Colts are going to have to play against early on, and the offenses. I mean, these teams they all want to get into the playoffs or win their respective divisions as well. And, they're going to pin their ears back and come after that rookie starting quarterback, or they're going to just stack up on the left side and say, all right, let's have Samuel Tevi try to stop us now, and Will Holden. That's not going to be pretty for a while. So it's going to be interesting to see how the Colts can weather this. I think we'll learn a lot more in the preseason games. I mean, you're not going to learn too much. I don't ever think you learn much at all in the preseason games. I mean, how many times in Peyton Manning's career did he go 0-4 in the preseason? I want to say 95% of the time. The Colts looked like, oh, they're not going to win a single game this year, and then they would go on and make the AFC Championship. So you just never know. But it is concerning that for a while there, it just felt like every day there was another big name on the injury report. And then finally, they celebrated on Twitter when the Colts finally had a day of nobody leaving the field injured. And that was a day they didn't have practice. So that was it's kind of tough. And, same thing as a Purdue fan. We're seeing that right now as well. Everybody's getting injured. And you're just like, oh, my gosh, can we just get through camp and get to the real deal? I mean, yeah, you're not supposed to get injured this early. So it is concerning to see these types of injuries this early in the season, because these types of injuries are the type that can come back and haunt you later on in the season as well.
Real quick, one of the bright spots of camp has been the fact that, on Sunday, Darius Leonard was signed to a 5-year, $98.5 million deal, making him the highest paid. So I saw 2 reports. The report I saw was 98.5. So
I saw 9.25.
Right. So that was the first one. I don't know if there's some sort of bonus he got in there or something like that. I don't know. I saw 2 conflicting reports. So I had seen more reports that said 98.5 than I'd seen that said 99.25. So I went with what I saw more of.
Okay.
I mean, regardless, Darius Leonard is now the highest paid. Yeah, he's the highest paid inside linebacker.
What happened? That $750,000 difference is what Jim Irsay was using to throw out of the car in the Canton the Hall of Fame parade for Edgerrin James' car. He was just throwing out dollar bills, and probably where that bonus went.
Right. Well, and I mean, as far as the reaction to that news goes, quickly here, I'm glad it happened. Darius Leonard has been, one of the great stories over the past couple seasons, one of the kind of signature players in the Chris Ballard era. And so it's cool to see him get paid. After the summer that I've had as far as, my Cubs go, it's glad to see somebody getting paid for a change, a cornerstone of the franchise. And also just the fact that, we've been told the Colts haven't been spending, because, we got to sign all these other guys, Leonard and everybody else. So it's nice to see that getting kind of put into motion.
Yeah, I agree. It was good to see him get paid. There was people trying to start rumors on social media being like, oh my gosh, he's going to hold out. He's going to hold out. I'm like, stop. He's not going to hold out because they're working on something. I'm glad to see it happen. I'm glad to see Braden Smith get paid. That was good. I'm glad that they're working these deals out and these guys are going to be here long term. I just hope that they look at what happened at the end of the Peyton Manning, Bill Polian era with how they spent the money there, and when those few players went down with injuries and they had nothing behind them talent-wise. Hopefully they're still able to keep some good depth pieces and put out a really competitive team. It'll be interesting to see because you're going to have Quentin Nelson coming up here as well. And so you're going to have a lot of money put into three players and one of them's not a quarterback. So that'll be interesting to see how that plays out as well.
For sure. Well, speaking of Colts quarterbacks, we're going to talk about Peyton and Edgerrin James going to the Hall of Fame. But first, let's talk about our friends of the show. First of all, we just want to thank them for their support. Not only Anchor, who allows us to put our this podcast out every week, but also Eat Lunch and Board Game, which is my cousin's podcast about board games. Go check that out. He supports us as well, and it's a good podcast that's out there as well. So thank you to our friends of the show, and also want to remind you that you can follow us on Twitter at Crash Course FM. You can like us on Facebook, Crash Course Podcast. Go to our YouTube channel, 3C Media on YouTube. Doing some brainstorming what more content I can put on there. But for now, we've got the MCT podcast, our YouTube exclusive podcast. Those guys are killing it as always. That's also where you can see the video portion of the podcast. If you don't see our live stream, or if you decide to watch it instead of listen to it, that's where you can find us as well. Speaking of live streaming, twitch.tv/CraigCrash, that's where you can see us stream the podcast live. We love interacting with you guys in chat. Rage has already been in here saying hello to everybody. He's the best. That's where you can interact with us if you want to do that. Twitch.tv/CraigCrash. If you're also into gaming, I also stream on there. It kind of is just a built-in selfish plug now, for the gaming side of things. So if you're interested in, watching some gaming, just having some chill content, you can also take that in as well. And then remember, you can also you can listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, wherever podcasts can be heard. You can hear the Crash Course Podcast on Tuesdays. So if you want to hear the audio version. So big story of the weekend, if you're a Colts fan, was that Peyton Manning and Edgerrin James go into the Hall of Fame. Edgerrin James was, of course, part of the class of 2020. Of course, a lot of that stuff didn't happen last year because of COVID, so it was cool to see that happen finally. On his career, Edgerrin James ran for 12,246 yards, 80 touchdowns, and 4 Pro Bowls in 11 seasons. He spent 7 seasons with the Horseshoe. He had 9,226 yards, 64 touchdowns, 4 Pro Bowls. Peyton Manning, not a whole lot needs to be said there that you don't already know. 71,940 passing yards, 539 touchdowns, 14 Pro Bowls, and 2 Super Bowls in 18 seasons. He spent 14 seasons in Indy where he threw for 54,828 yards, 399 touchdowns. I really like to apparently typing yards because that's what I have in my in my notes. Yards instead of touchdowns. 11 Pro Bowls and a Super Bowl. He also has the most. He has the record for most touchdown passes in a single season, 55. He broke the record once as a Colt. Broke Dan Marino's record. Then Tom Brady broke it, and then he broke it again as a member of the Broncos in 2013. Also, Peyton Manning has passed for the most yards in a single season with 5,477. Beat that record by a yard. And also, he is third on the all-time passing yards and passing touchdowns list. Also gave one hell of a Hall of Fame speech. A very fun weekend at the Hall of Fame. So B. Scott and I thought it would be fun to talk about our favorite moments from both of their careers. I'll go ahead. We'll go back and forth. I'll give Edge. You give Edge. I'll give Peyton. You give Peyton. And Edgerrin James. I'll tell you what. I forgot. The last time he had played for the Colts was 2009, I think. No, not 2009, because he was gone before. No, that's when he retired. Sorry. He retired around 2009. The last time he played for the Colts was like 2005, because he was gone a year before the Super Bowl run.
He didn't play in a Super Bowl, though.
Right. No.
Yeah.
He didn't win a Super Bowl.
He was on the team that when Arizona made their run to the Super Bowl against the Steelers.
And they got beat.
Yeah, they got beat. He was on a Super Bowl.
Oh, I thought you said he has a Super. I thought you said he won a Super Bowl. I was like, Beats got no.
He had a Super Bowl appearance.
Yes, but also though, on that tangent, he does have a Super Bowl ring. One of my favorite things that I've wished that like other teams will do that, because I feel the same way about Starlin Castro. Starlin Castro, member of the Cubs, left the Cubs in 2015. Obviously, the Cubs go on to win the World Series in 2016. I thought the Cubs should do what the Colts did with Edgerrin James, because what the Colts did was gave Edgerrin James a Super Bowl ring from the 2006 Super Bowl run, even though he was gone a year earlier, because he was a part of all those great Colts teams, leading up to that run. So
I feel like the difference there is, though, the Colts told Edge they weren't going to bring him back, whereas I feel like the Cubs tried to bring back Starlin Castro.
No, they traded him to the Yankees. They traded him. What did they trade? Oh yeah, they traded him to the Yankees. I think for a bullpen arm. No, that was Gleyber Torres. But but that's one of my favorite Edge moments right there. But then you know what? It's tough to find a moment for Edgerrin James, and not because he didn't have memorable moments, but he just put his head down and just ran, dude. He just had.
It's so true.
He doesn't have because I looked it up. I was top 10 moments of Edgerrin James' career, because I was like, man, I can't decide on just one moment. There's not one that's just snaps into your head and you think that's a great Edgerrin James moment. There's moments in that list that's literally 72-yard run, 55-yard run, and it's just, they're just spectacular runs, and that's what he did. He just made big plays when it mattered, and that's what you want. But I did land on one that I thought was kind of a pivotal moment for Edgerrin James, and that is the 2003 AFC Divisional Round. The Colts win 38-31 at Arrowhead, and if you want to know the underlying, kind of storyline here, is that, you knew that the Colts had an advantage quarterback-wise. It was Peyton Manning versus Trent Green, but as far as the running game was concerned, this was Priest Holmes versus Edgerrin James. And not to say that you didn't think that, Edgerrin James was going to hold up, but remember, this is a Colts defense that typically, more often than not, was Swiss cheese, and that's what they were, sort of allowing 31 points. They weren't known for their defense, and so you're like, okay, well, the Colts, we know they can put up points. We have the better quarterback, but can Edgerrin James, put up as compete and go toe to toe with Priest Holmes? And that was what was on the other side, and he did that. He didn't outrun him. You're talking about James having 26 carries for 125 yards and 2 touchdowns. Priest Holmes had 24 carries, 176 yards and 2 touchdowns. But the key moment was Edgerrin James ran for his second touchdown with 11 minutes left in the game to make it 38-24, so that was big. This was on the heels of Peyton's first playoff win when they beat the Broncos the week prior, and this catapulted them into their first of 3 out of 4 years being the AFC Championship game. So this kind of catapulted them to that next level, to the doorstep, got them their first taste of that AFC championship, magic. And so that's why I think it's so significant is that Edgerrin James stepped up in that game, got what turned out to be the game-winning score, went toe-to-toe with Priest Holmes, and got the Colts their first of soon-to-be many AFC championship games. So that's why I think it's such a big moment, because that kind of catapulted the Peyton Manning career, helped catapult Peyton Manning's postseason career into that next level, because up to that point it had been, he can't win. And I think that, I don't know if that was a game where it was like cold and that was also significant. I can't remember, but we'll say it was, because I know that was the narrative for a while, was that Peyton can't win in the cold. So, like, that's why that moment kind of sticks out to me for Edgerrin James.
For me, it's not really a single moment that stands out for Edgerrin James. It's a couple different things, really. One, everybody kind of, he mentioned this in his induction speech the other night. He said, and he put it right, everybody judged a book by its cover with him. Everybody looked at him, saw the dreadlocks, the gold teeth, and thought, "No, man, he's not gonna be anything. He's gonna end up in jail. He's a convict, really." And he put it perfectly the other night. He goes, "Yep, I'm inmate number whatever it is of the in Quentin at the Hall of Fame prison," and it's so true. I mean, this is a guy that he, like you said, he just put his head down, worked hard every week, and honestly, in his career, I feel like he was more overshadowed than anything, because we were all looking at Peyton Manning and Marvin Harrison and the aerial attack. But you got to realize the Colts he put up these amazing numbers, and you just kind of forget about it. It's not the first thing that comes to mind when you think of that era of Colts. You don't think of Edgerrin James. So when he was inducted into the Hall of Fame, I was like, wait, he had a Hall of Fame career? And then you look at the numbers and you go, oh my gosh, he really did have a Hall of Fame career. But I think the biggest thing that stands out to me is his rookie season. He had an amazing rookie season, set numerous records for the Colts for a rookie running back. And the thing is, when the Colts drafted him, everybody hated the pick because the consensus top running back in the draft was still sitting there in Ricky Williams. The Heisman Trophy winner, Ricky Williams, was sitting there, and they passed up him, and they went with Edgerrin James. Just like same thing with Peyton Manning. They passed up Ryan Leaf for Peyton Manning. And look at how the careers for both of those guys took off compared to the guys they were taken over. And I think that says a lot in itself. And I think Edge used that as motivation as well throughout his entire career. But, this is a guy that he could have been a selfish player and said, I need more touches. I don't want to be here in Indianapolis anymore. Modern day, I don't think, I don't know. But I can't say if the way it would be today. I know in today's world, any type of running back that has Hall of Fame potential late in his career would not be looking at staying in Indianapolis at that time because of the aerial attack. Nobody's looking at the running game. They're all looking at the aerial attack of Peyton Manning, Marvin Harrison, and then eventually Reggie Wayne. I mean, it totally overshadowed, but he just came out and did his thing week after week after week. No complaints. Nothing. And I think that's also a big reason why you saw Jim Irsay give him a Super Bowl ring as well, because of how much he meant to shaping the Indianapolis Colts to what they were at that point in time. They just had to go younger, obviously, because running backs only have so much tread on the tires, and his career was coming to an end there. I mean, I think it was like 1 year later. Was it 1 year later, 2 years later, he played in the Super Bowl and he retired.
Yeah.
So he didn't have much time left, and the Colts, he agreed. The Colts made the right decision of letting him walk and with them drafting Joseph Adai then. I mean, look, then Joseph Adai had a really good career, but it was also overshadowed as well because it was on the back end of the Peyton Manning era. So it's, that's the type of player you want on your team is Edgerrin James.
Yeah. Could you imagine if it was Ryan Leaf and Ricky Williams for the Colts?
Dumpster fire.
Oh, yeah.
Dumpster fire.
For sure. Moving on to Peyton, for me, my memorable moment from him was one that I was in person for, in the RCA Dome. Young Craig Crash was excited with his foam finger in one hand, his hot dog in the other, ready to watch Peyton Manning take on who was it? Drew Brees at that point? I think it might have been Brees and the San Diego Chargers. And honestly, the Chargers got out to a pretty big lead in this game. But it was the game in which Peyton Manning breaks Dan Marino's touchdown record, which at the time, Dan Marino's record was 48. Manning ties and breaks the record in that game. Both touchdowns came in the second half. The Colts trailed in that game. I forgot it was a come-from-behind game. I can only imagine, I don't remember obviously what my exact feelings were, but I can only imagine what that place felt like, and what my parents who took me to the game must have felt like. It's like, oh, we're gonna take our son to see Peyton Manning throw, potentially his, record-setting touchdowns, and here it is, into the first half, the Colts are trailing 24-9. Peyton Manning has no touchdown passes. What's happening right now? The Colts do end up, they get a Peyton Manning pass to James Mungro. There's a name for you. They're back in the pantheon of Colts players. But that makes it 24-16. And then Peyton Manning hits Brandon Stokely with 56 seconds left for a 21-yard touchdown pass to make it 31-29. Edgerrin James, fittingly enough, scores the 2-point conversion, and the Colts win in overtime on a Mike Vanderjagt field goal. I mean, just the fact that I was there for that. I've got a poster, the commemorative poster that shows snapshots of that final drive that Manning went on, and just that legendary call, which obviously I didn't hear at the time, but heard later, of the Colts radio. It's to Stokely touchdown. That's the record breaker. It's just such a great moment. One that I will remember being there for. I will remember, for a long time. And diving in to Peyton Manning's 2004 season, I didn't realize kind of how crazy it was, because before December, Peyton Manning, who hadn't thrown more than 33 touchdowns in a single season, before the final month of the season had 41 touchdowns. And he had 4 games with at least 5 or more touchdowns, 6 of which came against the Lions on Thanksgiving. And then once the calendar turned over to December, he had 8 touchdowns, no 5-plus touchdown games, and he didn't throw more than 3 touchdowns in a game like the rest of the year. He threw 3 the first game in December, and then he threw 2, 1, and then 2, and that was for the 2 against the Chargers. And of course, the final week they didn't play him because they were already in the playoffs. But just kind of wild to think, because you would have thought, I remember Peyton Manning throwing for 6 touchdowns in that Thanksgiving game, but you would have thought that would have catapulted him. He was having kind of a okay season, that catapulted him into the realm of could he break the record? And in fact, he was already on record pace for most of the year. He was lucky to actually eke out the record at the end of the year. So that's pretty crazy to think about. But yeah, I just I remember that moment was just great. I'll remember it forever. It was fun being there, part of a fun weekend that me and my parents had, or my sister, she was there too. And we went to, whatever, Chris, it's fine. We also went to a Pacers game too, so it was a big weekend for us. But that was obviously the thing that capped it all off, was seeing Peyton break the touchdown record.
Yeah, so for me, obviously you got to look at the 2006 AFC Championship game. Obviously, getting over the hump of the Patriots. In that game, Peyton Manning had a rushing touchdown, which was pretty rare. There's so many, but that game alone, the battle, that was a legitimate battle, and that was one of the coolest moments to watch. I remember sitting in my dorm room at Purdue watching that and seeing that. Just the excitement on campus at Purdue with that was pretty cool. Another one. It wasn't a big deal, but I got to meet Peyton Manning. It was my sophomore year of high school, so random because I was the Riley kid of the game as a sophomore in high school. I got to go out and do the pregame coin flip. And so I got to meet him then. That was a pretty cool moment. I mean, they were just playing the Jaguars, and Mark Brunell was the quarterback for the Jags at the time.
Hey, throwback.
Oh, yeah. Mark Brunell was actually nicer than Peyton Manning, but that's probably because Peyton Manning was in the zone, and Mark Brunell was like, yeah, we're going to get our asses kicked, but it's okay. But that was a cool moment. I mean, you just got to look at Peyton, and you just got to realize, I think Colts fans take for granted what he truly meant to, not just to the organization, but to this city. I mean, if it wasn't for Peyton Manning, I honestly don't believe the Colts would still be in Indianapolis. I think they probably would have moved on because the city wouldn't have wanted to invested much more money. I mean, if they had gone with Ryan Leaf and Ricky Williams, I guarantee you the Colts would not be here. Lucas Oil Stadium would not be here. That means Big Ten football championships wouldn't be here.
No
the
Super
upcoming
Bowl.
national championship wouldn't be here. The Super Bowl wouldn't have come here. A lot of things wouldn't have come here if it wasn't for Peyton Manning. So what he meant to this city was just unbelievable. I mean, obviously, look, just right down the street from my house right now is Peyton Manning Children's Hospital. It's, he's left a lasting effect or on the city of Indianapolis, not just from the football field, but in the community as well. So that you got to look at that as his, as a legacy that he's left from his playing time. Here's a fun fact I just saw.
Yeah.
It took 13 seconds for the Hall of Fame committee to all agree that he should be first ballot.
Wow.
13 seconds. That's basically how long it takes for them to say, for everybody on the committee to say yes. I mean, there was no need for anybody to debate it. Not a single person disagreed. 13 seconds. That's I mean, that's probably how quick it's going to be for Tom Brady as well.
Right.
To be honest.
It's going to be 12 seconds.
Yeah. Do we even need to vote on Tom Brady? No? All right.
Well, speaking of first ballot Hall of Famer, I have a quick, a rapid fire hot article, but first of all, a less cool story than you brought up about Peyton Manning. Peyton Manning, I'll sneak in one more story here. The Colts went to what is now Schumann Stadium at Ball State, for like 1 day for training camp. Peyton Manning didn't hardly take any reps that day. He literally walked out from where the players come out for a football game at Ball State, came out with everybody around him, walks out, I think signed a few autographs, then walked back in. And I was like, I breathe the same air as Peyton Manning. Let's go. That was pretty much about it. Yeah,
it was the same thing. I think that season they did a tour because they also played a preseason game against the Saints at Ross-Ade Stadium.
Really?
Mm-hmm. And that was when Drew Brees was still at Purdue. So it was kind of...
Yeah, that's pretty bonkers. Yeah. But rapid fire hot or cold real quick. We talk about Peyton Manning, first ballot Hall of Famer. Is Eli Manning a first ballot Hall of Famer or B just a Hall of Famer? Or does he not make the Hall of Fame at all? I don't think he doesn't make it at all. But is he a first ballot?
Hot take.
First ballot? Really?
First ballot. I'm 2-time Super Bowl winner. And one of them was knocking off the undefeated Patriots, probably the best team of the modern era.
Okay, that's fine. Because that was something that actually a coworker had brought up to me. Shout out to Kathy in the break room. We were talking about the Manning brothers, and she was like, we were talking about when Eli retired, and I was like, oh, well, it wasn't the same year as Peyton because they're, different ages and all that stuff. And, I didn't realize that it was 2019 when Eli Manning retired. And it's rapid fire because I didn't really want to get too into the weeds, so I didn't look up a whole lot of stats here. I just wanted knee-jerk reaction. Do you think Eli Manning's a first ballot Hall of Famer? I'm a little bit more hesitant. I think I can get there, looking at the stats, but I think the things that are the most eye-popping is who he was in the playoffs, which I guess that alone could be what gets him. Because, he didn't just he went on some pretty good playoff runs. He didn't just knock off, it was still pretty big that you knocked off the undefeated Patriots and then beat them again a few years later in the Super Bowl, but it's also those 2 playoff runs themselves were pretty spectacular as well. So, like, maybe you could do that, but, like, other than those 2 big runs, like, the Giants really didn't do a whole lot. But then, like, I know he's got some numbers to back it up. Did he break the record for most consecutive starts?
I don't know.
I can't remember either. So, I'm a little bit more. I'm a little more hesitant than you are to say first ballot. But I think I could get there looking at the stats a little bit more. But I'm going to say, just to be a contrarian, I'm going to say cold and you say hot. So I think
I like it. He is.
Yeah,
I think also having the Manning name.
That's true.
Is it going to be a 13-second?
No. It's not going to be a. And I mean, also too, it depends on who else he's going up against.
That's true.
Because if it's like Eli,
here's a quick hot or cold take for you. Robert Mathis is eligible for the 2022 class. Is he in?
I don't want to say yes right away just because like that's obvious bias, but like at the same time, like I think so. Like I think he's in. It's just so tough to gauge like first ballot, like because like obviously like Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, whoever, like they're. I
don't remember. Was Edge first timer? Was he first ballot?
I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't think
so. I think he'd been on for like a year or two.
Yeah.
But like, and I mean, it also like I think it matters too. Like Robert Mathis was pretty like even keel. Like it obviously matters like if you don't get into a whole lot of trouble because I feel like Terrell Owens should be in, but I think because of his personality, he's not in.
He is in.
Is he in? Did he finally get in?
Okay. He last year he gave his acceptance speech at Chattanooga because they didn't have the ceremony.
Are you? I'm gonna look this up.
I'm pretty sure of this because I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
I clicked on, instead of clicking on his Wikipedia page, I clicked on his hometown, Alexander City, Alabama. It's not what I meant to do.
He gave his acceptance speech at Chattanooga, where he played in college.
Okay, yeah, he is in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. When did he get inducted?
Last year.
Are you sure it's last year?
I'm 100%
It wouldn't have been last year because they didn't even have a thing last year.
I know. That's why he did it at UT Chattanooga.
Well, why doesn't it listed on his... It doesn't count. It's not on his Wikipedia page, except for the link to the Pro Football Hall of Fame.
You want me to message his agent? I know his agent. I'll message his agent.
Oh, my God. Okay. Well, then there you go. Then I think Mathis will be in. That doesn't sway me alone, but I think Robert Mathis will be in first ballot, I think.
Dwight Freeney?
See, can you put them both in first ballot at the same time?
Yeah, they were like that duo.
See, and also the question is, did they retire? Did Mathis retire at the same time Freeney did? Because technically they'd both be up. Because I think on their own, I think if they're in the same, if they're up at the same year, then I don't think they go. I think one of them gets like not picked over the other. Like I think maybe like Mathis goes in before Freeney or vice versa. But
all right, so I'm looking right now. Freeney is not in the Hall of Fame. He's not even on the ballot next year, but Robert Mathis is.
Okay, but I think because Freeney retired later though, because I think Freeney was still milling around with the Chargers. So like, I think that Mathis.
He was with the Chargers, was he?
Yeah, Mathis is still like Mathis. I think will go in by himself because he's not on the same ballot as Freeney, and you don't want to put them both in at the same time.
Yeah.
So if that was the case, I would say no. But I think they'll both be first ballot because they're going to be on separate ballots.
Yeah, I'm looking over, trying to see here. Freeney will be eligible for the Hall of Fame in 2023.
So there you go. All right, so switching gears here. I like how that was supposed to be rapid fire. We just like got into the weeds, getting into the research there. I like it though, but yeah, I think at separate times they'll get in. Before we get into the doubleheader this weekend, again, big shout out to those of you commenting in the chat. Rage is here. He says that he needs those Peyton Manning yards converted to meters. We'll get right on that. Also, Megan Alexandria is here.
You want the meters? Go to Europe.
She also has a podcast that they do on YouTube and Instagram Live. It's about she's an author, so it's about like writing and all that great stuff. It's called So You Want Us, so go check that out. So yeah, we appreciate everybody coming in, interacting in the chat. So let's go ahead and switch gears to IndyCar and NASCAR, both at IMS. Last time we talked to you about IndyCar, it was after the Indy 500. Since then, we've had a few races to talk about. First of all, the next race they went to was Detroit. There are 2 races there. Race number 1, Will Power leads 37 laps, but he can't get restarted after a red flag. That was pretty nuts. With 5 laps to go, which gives the lead to Marcus Ericsson, who scores the first win of his career. What a way to get your first... I mean, spoiler alert, his 2 wins are the most insane wins ever. And then, so he gets his first win of his career. Will Power finishes 20th. Detroit race number 2, Joseph Newgarden leads the first 67 laps. This starts a kind of Joseph Newgarden snake-bitten saga. Pato O'Ward makes the pass with 3 laps left, and he never looks back, so Pato O'Ward gets the win in the second race at Detroit. Then they went off to Road America, where Joseph Newgarden again gets passed inside 3 to go, this time by Alex Palou. Palou wins his second race of the season, and then they went to Mid-Ohio. Joseph Newgarden, finally, he leads 73 of 80 laps, finally getting his first race win of the season. So that brings us to this past weekend. They were at on the streets of Nashville, which was a pretty dang cool side. The course looked a little narrow to me, but I think
narrow and wide.
Narrow and wide. It kind of, if you look at the outline of the track, it looks like a soup ladle, which I kind of like. So that's pretty cool. It's the inaugural Big Machine Music City Grand Prix. Marcus Ericsson makes big news because he goes airborne on the restart at lap 4, running over Sebastian Bourdais. It's kind of funny because they're both in the same crash and they both book in the field. Like, imagine being Bourdais, like you're in the same crash and you finish last. Like, that's got to be really terrible. But like it does no catastrophic damage to Ericsson, so he's able to take the lead. 29 laps later, on lap 33, he leads a brief stint of the race, and then it's really a chase between him, Colton Herta, and Romain Grosjean. Grosjean ends up crashing later on in the race. Those guys kind of exchange the lead in the middle portion of the race, but then Ericsson takes the lead back on lap 56 and does not look back. He leads 37 laps en route to victory at the first race at the streets of Nashville. There were 5 lead changes among 3 drivers, 9 cautions for 33 laps, which is pretty crazy. Scott Dixon, James Hinchcliffe, Ryan Hunter-Reay, and Graham Rahal round out the top 5. Alex Palou is still your point standings leader. So, looking at the reaction for this, man, what a race. It was a fun race. It was an exciting race. Crazy thing, it's wild to think that, like I said, it's crazy how IndyCar works. It's kind of like the beautiful and, frustrating thing about IndyCar, because there's 2, for one, Simon Pagenaud, like I said, involved in the same incident. He finishes last. Simon Pagenaud gets a little bit loose coming out of a turn. His back wheels hit the wall, so that puts him out. And then Marcus Ericsson goes freaking airborne, takes the front wing off the car, and he's good to go. He goes on to win the race. So it's pretty crazy that that's how it turned out. It looked like it was really a big, it was a big war of attrition most of the race. A lot of bumping, a lot of cautions. It seemed like the biggest problem area was right out in front of Nissan Stadium where the Titans play. That seemed to be the biggest point where drivers were getting slipped up, and I don't know if you can credit that to just being a new course or what, but
because Nick Yeoman was calling it from turn 1.
Right? Yeah. Right. Which I couldn't decide. So was he I
think he was actually in the stadium.
Right. So I didn't know if he was just on at the highest place that he could be, just looking backwards, or what?
I think that may have been what it was. I don't know. I mean, trying to tell from
because the picture he posted was just literally looking out at the stadium. I was like, well, that's not a good view of the track.
He did post some video.
Oh, I'll have to go in and check that out then. But yeah, it just seemed like it was a big war of attrition most of the race. Looked like it was a fun race though, fun and exciting, and very different. I'm glad to get these kind of. It's good to see IndyCar kind of get these new opportunities and these new tracks to go on. So I was excited. It was a good race. Fun to see Marcus Ericsson get his second win, and like I said, two of the most craziest wins you could ask for. You beat Will Power. Because he literally can't go on a restart, and then you beat Scott Dixon and Colton Herta after you went airborne on the fourth lap of the race. So pretty crazy, a couple of wins for Marcus Ericsson.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'll tell you what, Ganassi is having a heck of a season. And, I mean, usually when you say that, you're like, it's because Scott Dixon's winning every race. No, it's because Ganassi is like winning every race all across the board, whether it's Alex Palou, Marcus Ericsson, or Scott Dixon. It's unbelievable. But don't look now. The Iceman, he's back up he's only 38 points out of the championship lead. Here he comes, coming into Indianapolis. It'll be interesting, But it was good that it's like the kind of turnout that it had down there in Nashville. Racing that close to Music Row and over the Cumberland River. I mean, that's so cool. What other race is running over a bridge? I mean, that was cool. Now, obviously, if you watch any of the onboard cameras, when they hit the difference between the pavement and the concrete from the transition onto the bridge or off the bridge, it was jarring. Those cars were bouncing around. So yeah, when you say a war of attrition, these guys got out of the cars and they were beat up. But you know what? I think that makes it. I think it was such a cool event then to come into what we're coming into this next weekend. The first, the IndyCar basically had a month off. Everybody was like, they were running high, and you hope they don't lose that momentum. But man, did they come back with a bang for the second half of the season, going, starting at Nashville. That was a show. That was a great show they put on. Great racing. You saw everything. I mean, two red flags in a race. That's and I mean, at that point, then they were starting to. I don't think they even truly finished the race, did they? I think it got called after it got called shortly because the sun went down. I missed the end of the race.
Same.
And I was on Twitter and I saw it's official. Marcus Ericsson is the winner of the race.
Yeah, so when I looked at the timing and scoring, because I was trying to get the box score to get like the final stuff on the race so I could put it in the outline, and it wasn't available till super late. But from the timing and scoring, it said that they did 80 laps. Now I don't know if that was because they officially called it, so they just credited them with 80 laps. I don't know if that's how that worked, but that's just what the timing and scoring said.
We're racing against the clock for the sun going down, and it was going to be close.
Why did it start at 5:30 anyway, or 5 o'clock?
I don't know.
Because that's a really weird start time.
That is a really weird start time. If you're trying to beat, I mean, obviously you can't count. You expect two red flags, but
right.
Still.
Yeah, really weird. Because I feel like an unnecessary race against the clock.
At that point, they were competing against NASCAR, essentially. Oh, you know what? I wonder if it had to do with Olympic coverage.
Maybe. That's true. But yeah, speaking of NASCAR, let's, catching you guys up on the season. Last time we talked about that was the Daytona 500, so obviously a lot has happened since then. Kyle...
Essentially, here, to sum it all up, Hendrick Motorsports.
Yes, Kyle Larson has been dominant. 5 wins, 12 top 5s. He won Las Vegas. He won at the Coke 600. He won Sonoma. He won Texas. And he won Nashville. 3 of his 5 wins came in June. He absolutely caught fire. Martin Truex Jr. with 3 wins. Alex Bowman with 3 wins. Kyle Busch with 2 wins. Chase Elliott with 2. Those drivers all have multiple wins. Those are the only drivers that have multiple wins on the season. That's pretty much the order of where they are in the point standings as well. One cool thing about the season is, the number of road courses. There are 7 this season, and they have been through 5 of them. The first one was at Daytona, won by Christopher Bell, and then since then it's been alternating between Chase Elliott and Kyle Larson. Chase Elliott took the Circuit of the Americas. Kyle Larson took Sonoma. Chase Elliott took Road America. Kyle Larson took this past weekend at...
There we go again.
I know. I was doing my best to try to avoid it. Kyle Larson, it wasn't like 4 or 5, which is what we had before the show started.
I thought I was going to have to revive you.
Hold on, Craig, I'm coming. Driving all the way from where you are. Kyle Larson wins at Sonoma. Chase Elliott wins at Road America. And then Kyle Larson wins at Watkins Glen, where he led the final 27 laps. Chase Elliott, Martin Truex, Kyle Busch, and Denny Hamlin round out the top 5 from Watkins Glen.
Chase Elliott's going to win next weekend?
So, I mean, I'm not going to give out my spoiler for who I'm going to pick. Indy is the 6th road course of the season, last regular season road course, part of 3 road course races and 5 races. So that brings us to the doubleheader weekend at Indianapolis. IndyCar will be racing Saturday, August 14th for the Big Machine Spiked Coolers Grand Prix. And NASCAR side of it, Sunday, August 15th, it's the Verizon 200 at the Brickyard. So the big question is, with this kind of historic weekend coming up at IMS, what are you looking forward to the most? For me, it's these two. Do you call them sports technically? Are they 2 different sports because they're technically under the umbrella of auto racing? You call them leagues? Series. Okay, that's the word I was looking for, because they're not leagues, but they're not like different sports, different types of the same sport. So yeah, 2 different series coming together in kind of, as kind of corny as it sounds, kind of in harmony. And I think that's going to be really cool to see. I mean, you have both major auto racing entities at the racing capital of the world. You have your storyline where it's the first Brickyard on the road course, which everybody agrees is kind of a breath of fresh air into NASCAR at Indy. Might very well save NASCAR at Indy should it go well. You have Kyle Larson and Chase Elliott's dominance on road courses, so you have like who will win between those 2 drivers. You have all these different names in IndyCar who are coming out this year. Alex Palou, who's the point leader. Rinus VeeKay, who won at Indy the first time around in May at the road course. 8 drivers have won in 11 races this season. So you have like just all these different storylines. The fact that, and then it's also the fact that like NASCAR is more popular, but both fan bases coming together and rubbing elbows for an unprecedented weekend. It's just a fun thought. Like just the...
Paige Karen's running both.
So nice. So there you go. And then
on Saturday, he's doing a doubleheader on Saturday. He's doing IndyCar race, and then he's running Xfinity as well.
There you go. And then Jimmy Johnson is running the road course too, right?
Oh yeah, he runs the road course races.
So I was like, and that will be kind of an ambassador between the 2 sports too, is you'll have Jimmy Johnson. So like, I just think it's a great way, and that's kind of what I mean by bringing up like the popularity, is that like I think NASCAR, because it still has such a big following, like especially down south, that's like they're always going to be the sport that the South is going to carry them. But at the same time, like, I think the fact that these 2, the fan bases from both these sports getting a chance to kind of mix together, see what the other sport has to offer, is going to be huge in growing the popularity, because that's kind of what, like, is the problem with, like, IndyCar. I know it's been discussed before, is like, I mean, if it's not, Scott Dixon maybe walking down the street, like, you're not going to recognize, oh, that's Rinus VeeKay on the street. That's,
I think people will recognize Connor Daly.
That's true. Well, in Indy, but like outside of Indy, though. You know what I mean? Like now on a national scale, if you were to run into,
I think Hinch, because of his time on Dancing with the Stars.
That's true too. I mean, there are some exceptions, but like I guess what I'm getting to is not many NASCAR drivers probably know IndyCar drivers. Not many IndyCar fans know NASCAR drivers, and it's a good chance to like mix and get both like sports fan bases together and help grow each other's sports. And I think that's going to be big.
Joey Logano said a couple weeks ago in a video that he's looking forward to it because he's never seen an IndyCar race.
Right.
Like, wait a second. Yeah, you had. Did you not watch the race when you were in? You shared the same weekend last year?
Nope. He's like, I'm not watching a single minute of this thing.
I don't even don't care if I drive for Penske.
I don't want screw team chemistry. I'm not watching. But yeah, I'm just excited to see both fan bases come together and watch the sport grow a little bit, because I think it's going to be big in growing both sports.
Oh yeah, I definitely agree. I'm super excited about it. I got my tickets. I will be there for all 3 races, all day Saturday, all day Sunday. I'm super pumped. I'm ready to watch it. I got the wheelchair seats and the North Vista, so I'll be able to see turn 1 of the road course. I'll tell you what, IndyCar, yeah, that's always exciting. They figured out turn 1 of the road course. They have, they've done it enough. I'm looking forward to watching these NASCAR drivers go into that turn 1 for the first time, because NASCAR, they're still not practicing. Really,
Right.
They may be for this
Some.
one. So it's kind of like I'm looking forward to that, because I guarantee you they're gonna go into that turn 1 and it's gonna be madness. The turn 1 at Watkins Glen is pretty hectic. And I think that's what you're going to see here. You're going to see a lot of guys overshoot it. And I think there's going to be some crunching of cars. I'm looking forward to it. I'm really excited to see this. I think it's setting up for an amazing race, setting up for a great weekend. Yes, it's great to have it here in Indy, but I think at the same time, yeah, it's going to grow the popularity of both sports. It will. But for fans here in Indy, we always appreciate racing anyways, just being the racing capital of the world. Maybe not as much NASCAR as of late, because we appreciate good racing, and the product hasn't been as good recently on the oval. I'm interested to see what the fan turnout is like on this weekend, especially for the NASCAR race. I know the fan turnout will be really good on Saturday for the IndyCar race, and people will stick around for the Xfinity race as well. I guarantee. I just know that. But I'm interested to see what the fan turnout is on Sunday for when the Cup cars hit the road course. I'm looking forward to that.
Well, before we go here, let's go ahead and get into our predictions for who we think are going to win both the IndyCar race and the NASCAR race. For me, IndyCar, I had a big whole spiel behind who I thought was going to win the Indianapolis 500 the last time that we did our picks, and I kind of have a mini one here, and I think it's going to be Will Power, and here's why. He's a driver who, for a time, him and Simon Pagenaud just kind of alternated who won the road course at Indy. This is another driver who has been snake bitten as of late. We talked about Joseph Newgarden being snake bitten for a while, not being able to get the win. And I know that the difference there is that Joseph Newgarden was still contending in those races, whereas Will Power, except for the one at Detroit, hasn't really been contending. But I think this is going to be a good bounce back week for Will Power. He's one of the few drivers that haven't won this season. We've seen so many different drivers win that I feel like Will Power is due. So I'm going to go with Will Power for IndyCar. I think he gets the win on Saturday. And then on Sunday, I'm going with Chase Elliott. And not because of the alternating that they've been doing, although that's part of it, between Kyle Larson and Chase Elliott. But if you've noticed the pattern, there have been 5 road course races, 4 after Daytona. And since Daytona, the 2 new road courses that the NASCAR series has been on, Circuit of the Americas, and what was the other one? Circuit of the Americas and Road America. Were those the 2 ones? So, yeah, Circuit of the Americas and Road America. The 2 new road courses that NASCAR has gone to, those were won by Chase Elliott. The 2 road courses that have been on the season every year since I was a wee lad rooting for Jeff Gordon, Sonoma, Watkins Glen, and Sonoma.
You drink your tea with your pinky out?
Yes, a wee lad. Sonoma and Watkins Glen, those were both won by Kyle Larson. So, new road course. Kyle Larson won last week, so I think that just kind of makes it all the more likely that Chase Elliott gets the win, because it's a new road course that they're racing at this weekend, not one that they've been to before. So I'm going to go with Chase Elliott winning the NASCAR race, Will Power winning the IndyCar race.
I'm going to go, I got to go Joseph Newgarden. He was pretty dominant in the race 2 of the Harvest GP. last year, and I feel like that's kind of what's setting up here as well. He had a rough weekend. He was right up there. I think he was second place at one point, and then a series of cautions came out and bumped him back. So I'm looking for him to have a really solid weekend, as well as potentially Connor Daly. I think he's a guy that he's just getting better. Every week he's out in a car, he seems to be getting better. So those are the guys I'm looking at. I'm going to go with Joseph Newgarden, though, just because he's got the experience of winning, and I think he can pull it off. On the NASCAR side of things, I'm going with Chase Elliott as well. I mean, statistics show it's a new road course. Chase Elliott's the road course king. You got to go with him. I'll tell you what, though. This weekend is, before we sign off, we hadn't mentioned this yet.
Oh my, yeah. Go ahead.
But this weekend it's going to be kind of bittersweet this weekend. It's going to be really cool being in the racing capital of the world and having two of the biggest series in the United States at IMS. But unfortunately, there's going to be one less person there this weekend that really loved IMS, loved racing. And that's legendary voice Bob Jenkins, passed away today. He was battling brain cancer. Diagnosed, I think, back in the end of 2020 is when he announced it. But, Bob Jenkins was the voice of the 500 for, seemed like forever. Inducted into the Indianapolis Motor Speedway Hall of Fame. So it's going to be kind of bittersweet to be out there this weekend and not hear the voice of Bob Jenkins over the PA system or on the radio. And but it's going to be great to be there for everybody to honor him as well. He's going to be there in spirit for sure. But to be able to, for the biggest, basically, he called NASCAR for, it was like.
I was going to say, he was literally the first voice of racing for me because he was, he was calling NASCAR and he, when I got my first video game system was a PS1 and the first game I ever got was NASCAR 99 and he was the play-by-play, him and Benny Parsons were the play-by-play.
Yeah, he started doing NASCAR in, I believe, 81.
Yeah.
It was like through 97, I believe he did NASCAR for ESPN. He was also the voice of the inaugural Brickyard.
Yeah.
So it's going to be cool to bring the two biggest racing series in America together at the racing capital of the world, a place that he loved greatly, and to be able to put on a heck of a show this weekend between all the series and being able to honor him. That's going to be a really cool moment there.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I'm glad that you caught that because I kind of got caught up in it and everything and forgot to mention that. But, yeah, definitely a bittersweet weekend. But it's kind of, I don't want to sound crass here, but it's definitely, it's a good kind of like fitting thing that you get a chance to come together and honor him, both sports that he was a part of this weekend. So, but, yeah, definitely will be missed and definitely sad to see him not be able to continue on and see him pass away. So, but on that somber note, that will do it for this week's edition of the Crash Course Podcast. We both think Penske's going to win in some capacity for the IndyCar race. We both picked Chase Elliott for the Brickyard. So that should be a lot of fun. Very excited for that.
Hold on. If Chase Elliott wins, nope, this will be the second father-son duo. Right?
Who would have been the first?
Did Al Sr. and Al, little Al won?
No, maybe it would be the first Brickyard for sure, but I don't know about
Has there been anybody in IndyCar?
It'll be a fun trivia question for sure because it will be like which father-son combo, and the caveat will be like who's the first father-son combo to win on both the oval and the road course, because that'll be literally the only father-son duo to do it. To this date.
Yeah, it may honestly be the first father-son combo ever win at Indianapolis.
Maybe. I
We
feel
will
like
find that out, and we will let you know next week.
yeah, we will.
Because we could be recapping it and say, hey, look, Bill Elliott won, and then later on, Chase Elliott won.
That was so cool. I remember being there. I was there for that when Bill Elliott won, and that was so cool to like see him get a win because it was like I remember him like being in the field for so long, but I just remembered him in like the '94 McDonald's car that was like never near the front, and it was just like, oh, Bill Elliott, look at that guy. He's just weird and old, and he's at the back of the field, and then he like went to Ray Evernham Motorsports and got super good. And got great stuff behind him and won a few races, so that was pretty cool to see.
Still remember Ricky Rudd winning it on a fuel mileage in that old bright orange Tide car.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, the memories. Well, that will do it for this week's edition of the Crash Course Podcast. We will be back next week with another edition of the podcast. Remember, you can follow us at Crash Course FM on Twitter. You can like us on Facebook, Crash Course Podcast. You can listen to us every week on Anchor. You can listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify. Everywhere podcasts can be heard, you can hear the Crash Course Podcast. You can also come interact with us and stream. Dusty in the chat, Rage, Megan, everybody who hung out tonight. Come interact with us in the chat. We love to hear your feedback. And then, every week at twitch.tv/CraigCrash, you can also go to our YouTube channel, 3C Media, where not only you can see the MCT podcast, which is our YouTube exclusive, but you can also see us every week as well if you want to watch. If you want to hear the same thing you would normally hear on the radio, but you want to see our faces, because we're just two of the most good-looking guys out here. So,
I have your answer. Father and son combinations that have won the Indy 500. Al Unser Sr., Al Unser Jr.
So there you go.
So
is that the only?
That is the only. There are brother combinations, Al Unser and Bobby Unser.
Yeah.
But Al Unser Sr. and Al Unser Jr. are the only father-son combo to have won at Indianapolis, and Bill Elliott and Chase Elliott could become the next.
Yeah, there you go. And it'd be one for each sport, too, which is pretty crazy. All right. Well, B. Scott, where can they find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Brandon_Scott87.
Well, next week we will be talking about a plethora of things. Of course, we'll be talking about this incredible week in motorsports as well. It's going to be a lot of fun, but until then, have a good week, everybody.